Okay, here is my instructional video for how to feed your starter. So everything that you need is right here. Filtered room temperature water, unbleached whole purpose flour, the jar of starter, something to measure with, a kitchen scale, and then what I'm going to use to stir with. So there is two ways technically that you can feed your starter. So you can either feed directly into this jar, or you can discard into this jar and feed this one and keep them back and forth, going back and forth. Really the only benefit that I see to pouring into a separate jar and doing the 2-jar method is that it's really easy to keep your starter jar clean when you do that. So for this video purpose, I will discard into this jar and do the 2-jar method. But if you don't want to do the 2-jar method, then you can just discard into the trash when you do your discard. When you look into the jar, you can see all of the bubbles from the starter. So this starter was in the refrigerator for about a week, and then I fed it yesterday. I'm going to feed it again today, and then it should be ready to make dough tomorrow. It's watery, lots of bubbles, but you don't really see very many bubbles on the side of the jar. So I know that, and it didn't really rise a lot when I fed it the first time. So that's how I know it's not quite ready. Tomorrow it should double in size. So you don't really have to measure when you discard. You just kind of want to put enough in the jar that you know you've got a good base going. So that's probably enough. So if you were just dumping this into the trash, then you would feed what's in here, and then this would be in the trash. But I'm actually going to feed this instead. So I'm going to turn on my scale, and then 100 grams of water. If you're a little over or a little under, it's within a few grams, it's fine. Get my flour. I use a little spoon, so it takes a minute for me to get to 100 grams, but it's just easier to scoop it out of this jar into this little one when you have a little spoon. It keeps it less of a mess. Because that is part of the struggle, is getting flour everywhere. Close enough. Hey, perfect. Okay, and then you just take it off the scale. You take a wooden spoon and you stir it. It's hard doing this one-handed because the jar is spinning, but basically you stir it until combined. And when you pull out your spoon, wipe your spoon down with a paper towel before you rinse it off. And don't ever dump sourdough down the drain, because it will eventually get to the point where it clogs your drain. So, because it hardens like cement after a long time. So don't ever dump it down the drain. Any utensils that you use with sourdough on it, just make sure you wipe it down before you wash it in the sink, or it'll stop up your sink. So you just want to make sure that the flour and everything is combined with the starter that was in the bottom of the jar. I like to scrape down the sides of the jar. And then I like to take a rubber band and put a rubber band where the starter is sitting, like once you combine it. So that way you can do that, or you can mark it with an expo marker, the side of the jar, so that way you know like where it started and you can tell how much it grew. And then you take the lid to the jar and you just pop it onto the jar and leave it, so that way air can get in it for the fermentation. You don't want to screw it together, because then it won't get the air that it needs to ferment. Then you just leave the guy overnight, and by the time that I wake up in the morning, it should be double the size.